Believe it or not, South Africa is celebrating its 30th year of our constitutional democracy.
Essentially, we've got to build on an incredibly strong constitution, but it does mean that we have to create opportunities to discuss and renew from time to time.
The most progressive document in the world, which is South Africa's constitution, which actually paved the way for us to be where we are.
The way that we are going to build the future is by setting a clear sense of national ambition that refuses to accept or believe that our country can only decline.
It's really inspiring to hear from people who have done a lot to change our country, and also very interesting as a young person just to often read about politics and kind of law and our country in the news, but to actually hear it from people who have been there and done these things is really cool.
We're very excited to be part of an event where we are looking at how coalition government, the government of national unity, can look at constitutional development in this country.
We are not here to speak to the converted. We are here to make our united voice louder for the commitment to put South Africa first.
Which is one of the reasons both our foundations and other foundations have been at the forefront of calling for a national dialogue that ensures that all South Africans are thinking about the future of the nation.
And we have a stunning opportunity, and we, as ordinary citizens, as civil society, we have to take that gap.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Constitution at Work podcast, brought to you by the FW de Klerk Foundation.
In today's podcast, we will be discussing the Government of National Unity and what exactly this means for South Africans.
Today, our podcast delves into South Africa's economy.
Today, we continue our discussion on electoral reform.
That was another episode of the Constitution at Work podcast, brought to you by the FW de Klerk Foundation.
To this end, we have submitted that perhaps the panel can consider using vehicles such as the National Youth Debate Initiative or the National Dialogue Initiative even to get the youth both educated, because how our electoral system works isn't something that we are taught in school at all. It should be. It should absolutely be something that we are taught in life skills and orientation.
Through the Global Leadership Foundation, FW nurtured democratic principles and good governance in diverse nations. He didn't just pass on his legacy, he multiplied it far beyond South Africa's borders. Future democracies will depend upon leaders who see beyond their own time, who act decisively when history calls, and who have the humility to prioritize the greater good. Leaders with the characteristics FW exemplified.
So it's amazing to be here at the launch of this amazing facility where the history of our democracy is really told. The transition, and then of course the Constitution. I mean, young people who are born today won't know this history, and you've got to tell the story, because we don't ever want to go back to what South Africa was like in that divided past, and the guardrail is our Constitution.
My vision for the centre is that it needs to play a crucial role in terms of shaping our democracy, making sure that all of our people benefit from our democracy. This is what the centre is all about. It must become a hub of intellectual discourse about a better future for It's on the dot 2 o'clock. Van my kant af, baie welkom. Is lekker om so 'n klomp mense hier te sien. As the executive director, it's really been a privilege to be your MEC, or your MC rather, for this afternoon. We're about to commence these proceedings. And I would like to welcome our chairperson of the board, Elita de Klerk, to come and do a special word of welcome. Elita?
We've gathered here with the objective to award the Goodwill Award of the Foundation, which we will give it to Rassie Erasmus. But also, I want to stress how the Konrad Adenauer Foundation has been supporting us all through the years, and this partnership is a very meaningful one. Thank you so much, Gregor Jacke. Where is he? Did I say it okay? I couldn't say the Jacke. Okay. Thank you for your loyalty, support, and friendship. This year's conference is my fourth one without FW. It has not been easy. Many of you knew and worked with my husband and have walked a long way with the foundation. Looking at the audience, I see old faces, but some new faces, and which makes me exciting. We are all here to protect and promote. Promoting reconciliation, building, is very important in our country. Let us share South Africa's expertise and example in different resolution, in conflict resolution with the world today, still so relevant and topical. The theme of today's conference, South Africa's position in the world today, I'm truly grateful to our distinguished guests, speakers who come from very different walks of life. Thank you for making yourselves available, and thank you for sharing your views from your walks of life and your different perspectives. This year, to be exact, is 35 years since the second of that FW gave his famous speech before Parliament, a speech that changed South Africa forever and paved the way from the horrendous system of apartheid to a constitutional democracy. An interesting fact is how intertwined the political fate of South Africa and Germany is. As my late husband would later often state, the collapse of the wall of Berlin and subsequently the collapse of the Soviet Union opened a window of opportunity for the change in South Africa. He realized that the balance of forces would never be favorable enough, and as he, at the time being the president of the country, he could use his privileged position to do something about it. The peaceful transition from apartheid to constitutional democracy is one of the most powerful success stories South Africa has to share. Just think for a moment what Madiba and FW could have achieved in the Middle East in their own way. To tell the whole story from the dark days of apartheid to the negotiations of CODESA until the signing into law of the final constitution, we at the de Klerk Foundation have launched the Center of Constitutional Transformation. It's an objective narrative of the process. It will be our biggest pleasure to welcome you there, to show you what we've done, and for you to understand how the process of the CODESA process took place. I've lost my page. Ooh. During the apartheid years, South Africa had become a pariah state. We were excluded, we had economic sanctions, we had boycotts. We didn't have a place in the world. The speech of the 2nd of February changed all this, because the prime motivation was justice for all, to abolish an unfair system inherited by the colonialist era. I know many times FW is called the last apartheid president, but it's the apartheid system he had inherited. The hosting of mega sports, such as the Rugby, Western Cups, the FIFA, World Cup, the international summits, this year's leading the G20, are just a few examples of how far we have come as a country. We see the big change of South Africa, but the world has dramatically changed too. So we need to be aware that we must cultivate our relationship with others. We can't take it for granted. Because we have to ameliorate our status quo from this country who is suffering in extreme poverty. There's a journalist, I can't say his name too, Barney Mthombothi. Anyway, he says, we need to understand that we need to woo the world, and we need to understand that we need the world more than the world needs us. Now, my husband said something very nice, which I want to include. He said that it was on the 25th anniversary of the new democracy, and he said, every morning since I became politically conscious, I have woken up and worried about the future of the country. It is this that distinguishes South Africans from those other people in the world who have never had to worry about existential threats, who they deal with their politics, they deal with their economical state, social policies, they have regular elections, the occasional scandal, but there's no issue of survival there. This means that South Africans have never had the option of complacency. Lastly, but not least, how can our Constitution, the foundation of our democracy, guide us through all this? How can the Constitution and all of us united can bring social justice, something that the politicians don't seem to grasp? There are a few questions at today's program that we will tackle, and with you amazing speakers, I hope it will be a very interesting and fruitful afternoon, and we will become richer by what we are going to hear. And I'm going to say, instead of good luck, let the games begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's really an honor for me also to just introduce our board members to you. Elita is our chairperson. Where's Christina Teichmann, our deputy chairperson? Mr. Let me just call out the names, then we can give them an applause. Dave Stewart, our chairman emeritus. Dr. Coetzee Bester, where's Coetzee? Over there. Thank you, Coetzee. Also, Judge Ian Farlam, unfortunately, he will not be joining us today. Dr. Lucky Matebula, Lucky, over here. Also, Dr. Janet de Klerk Lutig, unfortunately, she's also not here today. Mr. Peter Simon Basson, Peter, there you go. And then also Lulekwa Kwabeni, Lulekwa. Also, Tommy Ikanina Malinga, where's the Tommy? Welcome. Also, Warren Klulo, he is unfortunately not here today. And Michaela Bakala, she's also honorary board member, not being available today. So that's our board, and then we've got a very small staff, 5-team comprising of young people. Obviously, I am the youngest in that team. Then we have a very, dedicated focus. Focus is on advancing our constitution, because that's all what we have. If we can use our constitution as the blueprint to develop our nation, if you read through that constitution, and it's regarded as the most beautiful, most well-thought, well-crafted document in the world, if we can just stick to that blueprint, we could have been much further down the road. And our job as an institution is to safeguard it, to promote it, and especially to get young people to become the custodians of it. And our 3 programs consist of a legacy program, so you're more than welcome to come and visit our Center for Constitutional Transformation. It's up in Hatfield Road, just further down where the Parliament building is. We also have a second program, which we call Constitutional Rights Program. There we engage with Parliament about the Constitution, not necessarily Constitution, but constitutional principles that should be embedded in every piece of legislation that is passed through Parliament. And then thirdly, constitutional advancement. And that advancement program is aimed at young people, empowering them, making sure that they participate actively in our democratic processes. Often people think democracy is a job of politicians. Democracy is our job. It's a collective job. In other words, we must take co-responsibility of democracy. Democracy doesn't come once in 5 years where we vote and then we sit back and expect the politicians to do the work. Our job is to make sure that we keep those that we elect in positions accountable, but that we become co-workers, co-shapers of the future that we want to have for the next generation. That, in short, is my 5 cents. Importantly, colleagues, or guests, the toilets are just on the outer side of this corridor. Please switch off your phones and let us also make sure that all of our speakers really get the opportunity to bring their points of view across. We then will proceed, and let me perhaps just also just acknowledge the presence of our speakers. There's Magda Wierzycka, we will hear from her a bit later on. Also Andreas Peschke, also Dr. Harlan Cloete, and also from Rassie Erasmus. They are all 4 seated here in front. We will now give an opportunity to Kaz, our partner, who helps to fund these events, Gregor Jaker, to come and address us. Jaker.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Elita de Klerk, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Germany, Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Ukraine, and other state representatives, distinguished guests. As the resident representative of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in South Africa, it is a pleasure to welcome you all here today. We are proud to collaborate with our partner, the FW de Klerk Foundation, as we honor the 35th anniversary of de Klerk's speech that began South Africa's constitutional transformation process. And for those unfamiliar with CAS, we are a think tank close to Germany's Christian Democratic Union, CDU, which will likely win the next election in Germany on the 23rd of February. The Konrad Adenauer Stiftung promotes democracy, good governance, human rights, and the rule of law through more than 100 offices worldwide and has been working in South Africa since 1982. One of our key areas of focus is strengthening multi-party democracy by supporting those who tirelessly work to uphold it. The world and South Africa finds itself at a critical juncture. Globally, we are witnessing the rise of populism, be it in Europe or Donald Trump's election in the United States. This shift has forced many to consider the fragility of democracy afresh. It is necessary to ask, how can we counter the rise of populism? I'm not usually in the business of referencing famous communists, but Lenin is unimprovable in his observation that, I quote, "There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen." End of quote. These words resonate today, given the rapid political and social change. In a time of uncertainty and disruption, voices like those of CAS and the FW de Klerk Foundation need to stay the course. We need to be steady in the message that substantive, constitutional, multi-party democracy remains the system that gives us the best chance at promoting development and human dignity. Our challenge is stark in making this hard-earned historical lesson heard. Populists worldwide have now learned that they don't need to win the battle of ideas or even of hearts. It is enough to win the battle of attention. A recent newspaper article referenced the US writer George Saunders to illustrate this difficulty. Imagine a cocktail party or a conference like this one. A person comes in speaking into a megaphone. Some things they say appear sensible, some are meaningless, some offensive, but most importantly, the person does not stop talking and is loud. It becomes impossible for anyone to do anything but listen to them or attempt to shout a simple sentence to the person they are talking to. And that sentence is likely about the person with a megaphone. And then someone comes in and distributes megaphones to everyone. The room descends into chaos. Sensible communication has come to an end or is restricted to brief moments in a small part of the room. I leave it to you to ascribe a politician to this. Imagine the person with a megaphone and a social media channel to the person distributing microphones. This new political moment in which grabbing attention becomes more important than ideas, content or emotion is particularly helpful to populists. And populism, which has gained momentum globally, is well set to advance in South Africa. Figures like Jacob Zuma or Julius Malema may currently command a fraction of the electorate, but their influence on the country's political culture is growing. They know how to resonate emotionally with voters by capitalizing on dissatisfaction and frustration. And they are being shown much further. They can take the power of noise over substance beyond their habit to date. Why are populists in South Africa and all over the world so dangerous? Their disregard for principles of good governance and transparent participatory politics threatens the integrity of democracy. Their actions and rhetoric have been and are continuing to water down the unwritten political norms that allow for democracy to achieve its promise of protecting and enhancing human dignity. In South Africa, Julius and Jacob are only the beginning of this political trend. Other political entrepreneurs are taking note as they eye the ballot box. They know that the ultimate goal is to hollow out or destroy South Africa's constitutional democracy, to be able to offer political access and influence to the highest bidder. And how do we as Democrats respond in this political battle for attention? We do not have a perfect answer yet, but we can be certain democracy can only hope to survive populism if democracy delivers fair access to food, housing, education, healthcare safety, and a sense that things are getting better. This is the task of government for which it should be held accountable. Supporting the citizens in seeking accountability is the core role of a strong civil society and organizations that fight for good governance and a liberal constitutional order. Today's host and our long-time partner, the FW de Klerk Foundation, is exemplary in this task. I look very much forward to today's insight, and thank you very much for your attention.
Any of those guests standing out there, please, there's some more seats. Welcome to all of the young students. It's always a privilege to have you here, and I hope and trust that you will listen and learn, because this is really a momentous occasion also for you. Let me greet the public protector, Skoleka Galeka, who's sitting here in front. Welcome. There's two people in South Africa you must keep close to your side. That's the taxman and the public protector. So welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start our speeches, and I'm going to ask Ambassador Andreas Peschke to please step forward. He is the German ambassador in South Africa. Your information is outlined in the program, sir. I'm not going to read it because that will take another half an hour. Over to you.
Thank you very much, dear Christo van der Rede, dear Elita de Klerk, dear Gregor Jekke, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure for me to be here, to say a few words to you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the De Klerk Foundation for organizing this afternoon. Thank you to the Konrad Adenauer Foundation for co-organizing this event. And I would say it's really great to think together, to think jointly about South Africa's position in the world from various perspectives. As you would expect, me being a diplomat, I would like to start with a couple of thoughts from an international perspective. For us, as an international partner of South Africa, this country on the southern tip of Africa is an indispensable partner on the continent. Of course, it's the largest economy on the continent, but it should also be an anchor of stability with an influence and a capacity to project stability beyond its borders. What do I mean by this? Looking at Africa today, one can sometimes become a bit gloomy. Yes, there is growth in Ghana, there is economic dynamism in Kenya, there is South Africa's own progress down the lane of a green economic transition. But there's also a lot of reasons for huge concern. Take the situation in the Sahel, where entire states are undermined by political unrest and extremist and terrorist threats. Take the civil war in Sudan, take the still fragile situation in Ethiopia, and now the situation in Eastern DRC has spilled totally out of control. These crises and conflicts in the Sahel, at the Horn of Africa, and the DRC and other regions have intensified in recent years. And overcoming these crises has become even more challenging. And the expectations vis-à-vis South Africa on the continent and beyond are growing. This country, South Africa, is making a great effort to live up to this responsibility in the UN, in the African Union, as well as in SADC, through diplomacy and troop deployment. But the truth is that the expectations and the needs are only growing, and there's no magic solution to the multiple security challenges we face on our continents. So who is going to tackle these challenges? Ubani. Sizo Azulula. Kanjani lezes inkinga. How we are going to solve these problems? We always talk about African solutions to African problems, and no doubt the African Union has a role to play. Regional organizations like the SADC, EAC, ECOWAS in West Africa, which is actually in deep trouble itself, they have a role to play. But important states need to play a role too. Who, if not South Africa, is in a position to take responsibility? That is the role we, as partners, would see for South Africa to add stability on this continent. It comes at a cost, as we have tragically seen in Eastern Congo, where over a dozen of South African soldiers lost their lives. I know that there's a domestic debate about the deployment of South African troops within the SADC mission to Eastern Congo. We have seen quite an exchange of words between the leaders of South Africa and Rwanda. I won't go into this, and I won't go into the internal political debate, as I'm a diplomat, not a politician. I would only say that South Africa's active commitment to stability on the continent is appreciated by international partners, and it is needed. 2 years ago, we had the African Union negotiations in Pretoria on an accord to end the civil war in Ethiopia. And the Pretoria Agreement still forms the basis for the peace process to move forward. So this commitment is appreciated and it is indispensable. But South Africa's role plays out also beyond the African continent. It is a heavyweight among the countries of the Global South. Maybe not an economic heavyweight, if you compare it with other major countries of the Global South, like China, like India, like Brazil, but certainly it is a heavyweight of opinion, a kind of spokesperson for issues of the Global South, be it at the UN for the reform of the United Nations, be it for the reform of international financial institutions or negotiations about the global pandemic treaty. And as such, South Africa's voice is heard and taken seriously. This year, South Africa is in the spotlight, chairing the G20 as the first African country to do so. We strongly support South Africa's presidency under the theme Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability. Not so long ago, South Africa presided over the BRICS group. I'm neither a member nor a fan of BRICS. But truth be told, during its presidency, South Africa proved that it is capable to preside professionally and sometimes even elegantly over a very heterogeneous group of nations. Back in the G20, we would also welcome that South Africa aims at continuity after Brazil's presidency when it comes to the development and to development issues, to climate issues, and we also support the focus on Africa. With the compact with Africa, We have a G20 initiative that was launched during the German G20 presidency in 2017. This initiative has been anchored in the G20 finance track via the Africa Advisory Group, which is co-chaired by Germany and South Africa. So we hope that the compact, as a key initiative for improving the investment climate in Africa, can be taken further during South Africa's G20 presidency this year. All this does not mean that we always have the same opinion. Actually, we have had intense foreign policy discussions, for instance, after Russia started its illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. The same is true with the view to the situation in the Middle East, obviously. But let me start where we agree on this one. Both South Africa and Germany see the two-state solution as the only viable and sustainable path to take. We, of course, welcome the agreement on a ceasefire and the release of hostages, and we hope that this agreement may pave the way to a permanent end to the war. But of course, when the ANC government at the end of 2023 chose to take Israel to the International Court of Justice based on the Genocide Convention of 1948, we, Germany, did not agree with South Africa's legal position. However, while we have a different legal position, we appreciated South Africa's decision to call the International Court of Justice, because that's why we have it. It's better to go to court to solve disputes than to try to solve disputes outside our joint rules and regulations. I think the public protector would agree, yeah? This is the reason why we have such multilateral institutions. This is also about the respect for rules as the basis for an international order. And here, many countries, including Germany, would appreciate South Africa's strong and active support for the rules-based international order, for international law and multilateral institutions. It is at the heart of our convictions and our international credo as well. So there, obviously, we would like to cooperate, particularly as times are not easy for the rule of law in international relations. When a nuclear power and a member of the United Nations Security Council invades a neighboring country, what a shame. When other superpowers threaten to take control of islands or canals belonging or to being under the authority of others, including sovereign states. I mean, that's the world we are living in currently. So those of us who support international rules need to cooperate. Sidinga uku bambisana. Dis baie belangrik. Dat ons samwerk. And there's a role, a strong role for South Africa. For instance, we appreciated South Africa's support to Namibia and Germany as co-facilitators for the UN Pact of the Future, which we recently endorsed in New York. We agree that there's a need to reform the United Nations Security Council, whose composition reflects the world, not of today, but of 80 years ago. Africa must be appropriately represented in this body with 2 permanent seats, and South Africa, I'm not anticipating the decision by the international community, but certainly South Africa is a very strong candidate for one of those 2 seats. But it's not only the United Nations Security Council, we also work closely together with South Africa pursuing the Women, Peace and Security agenda at the United Nations based on Resolution 1325. We work together to reform peacekeeping, and we both serve currently on the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, where we cooperate and exchange to push forward a progressive agenda. Talking about human rights, we would see South Africa as a champion on the African continent. Of course, South Africa has come a long way and is maybe destined to play such a role like nobody else. After all, it overcame the repressive system of apartheid, and we remember President de Klerk's role, who opened the way to tear down the walls of this apartheid system. Then South Africa installed a democratic system in a process of truly historic dimensions. It passed a very progressive constitution. Christoph van der Rede already spoke about it. And some say that the way South Africa overcame past injustices gives it the moral power to speak up for human rights today. So we actively work both with South Africa's government as with civil society institutions on human rights, various organizations, with the various departments, with the City of Cape Town, with NGOs, tackling issues such as protecting and promoting women's access to land and property rights, or providing support to whistleblowers, important issues when it comes to civil society. And of course, there's nowhere in Africa where the LGBTI community has so much space as here in South Africa. Cape Town, of course, is many things, but some say it's even the queer capital of Africa. I won't buy into this, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. And no doubt there are issues between legal rights and their implementation. But let me just say that we regularly join hands also with South African institutions in support of the queer community over the continent for Pride events or the big ILGA conference, the International Coalition for Equal Rights, a few weeks back here in Cape Town. So no wonder, I mean, if you look at it from various perspectives, that many other countries would attach a big importance to South Africa, and that it is an important point of call for many international partners. Tshwane, Pretoria, is said to be the capital with the second most diplomatic missions worldwide. I would love to say Berlin is the first, but it's not true. But Tshwane, Pretoria is the second. In any event, when the German government recently adopted new Africa policy guidelines, this document was also conceived against the background of South Africa as an important partner here on the African continent. I mean, the thinking behind our guidelines was that pressing tasks such as containing the climate crisis, dealing with future pandemics, or maintaining peace and stability cannot be solved without the active participation of the African continent. We need Africa as a strong and capable partner in a rules-based international order, and we think that the core of our relationship with partners in Africa is to work together in the interest and for the benefit of both sides to address global challenges and to solve common problems cooperatively. The basic idea from our side in the future would be to foster what we can achieve together with Africa, not like some said in former times, achieve for Africa. So the idea of partnership is very important in our thinking. And of course also to learn from Africa. And there are certainly a couple of things we could learn from South Africa. Actually today I hope to learn something from Coach Rassie, how to build a successful rugby nation. Because here Germany is clearly lagging behind. Actually we are trying to qualify for the next World Cup because there are 4 more spaces. So there's going to be an additional qualifying round in Europe and maybe we can sneak our way. But then I'll come back to you. And of course, we certainly have a closer look how South Africa succeeded to form a government of national unity consisting of 10 parties within 2 weeks, when it usually takes months in Germany to form a coalition government consisting only of 2 or 3 partners. So there's certainly an issue where we can discuss. So these are just a couple of thoughts from my side. As food for our discussion, of course, we are fully aware that South Africa, like Germany, has quite a number of challenges of its own: unemployment, kickstarting the economy, modernizing infrastructure, managing disagreements within the GNU, the huge foreign policy challenge in Eastern Congo. The papers are full of it every morning. But sometimes I think it's important also to know the outside view, and that outside expectations to our countries can be very high, be it G20, be it at the UN, be it on the African continent. I would say the world needs a strong and capable South Africa. As they say, for a better Africa, for a better world. Thank you very much.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. It's now my honor to introduce to you Magda Wierzycka, who is the CEO of Sygnia. Also to publicly thank her for her support of the foundation. Now, if any one of you are interested in supporting the foundation, if you turn to the back of the program, you'll see there's a little QR code. And if you click on that code, it also asks for some other personal information related to your banking account. So please do so. Magda, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and clearly thank you to Elita in particular, FW Foundation, for inviting me to speak to you. I am not a diplomat, so let me just warn you ahead of time. Never have been. And a lot of statements I make have often been found contentious, which is just fine. I think it's a great privilege to speak, particularly at this juncture, at a conference which looks both at the past, the present, and the future of South Africa. Maybe let me start by, and that's a little bit of a reference to the past, tell you how I met President de Klerk. Probably 2019, so it was almost the dawn of Ramaphosa's era and of Jacob Zuma's era. Conference organized by PwC in London, a luncheon. And it was a luncheon with President de Klerk and the investment community in London. And as these things go, big round table, probably spanning the size of this room, probably around 20 portfolio managers, asset managers representing various asset management firms, all male, by the way. President de Klerk stood up and very valiantly tried to sell South Africa as an investment destination, which was absolutely amazing to hear and to see someone so passionate about a country. In response to which, he got an absolute barrage of abuse in terms of the corruption in South Africa and why should anyone from a global perspective look at South Africa and invest in South Africa. And it literally came from every side of the room. So I kind of looked at this and I thought, okay, he needs help. So I stood up and, not that anyone knew who I was, I stood up and I introduced myself by obviously just saying I'm Magda Wierzycka, but more importantly, I'm proudly South African. And I said, let's talk about corruption, shall we? In a state of corruption, there is always someone who pays and someone who accepts the bribe. So let's rather focus on people who paid. Shall we look at McKinsey? Shall we look at KPMG? Shall we look at SEP? Sorry. Shall we look at Deloitte? Shall we look at Bain? Those were the people who paid. Paying off people in a poor country like South Africa, where not a lot of people have, a lot of money, it's actually relatively easy. Bribing people who have nothing is not that difficult. So then I looked at everyone and I said, anyone here worked for McKinsey? Anyone here worked for KPMG? And of course, in asset management industry, that's usually the entry point into investments. So everyone just looked down at their plates and started eating. And that was that in terms of talking about corruption. But we continue to live with corruption in South Africa, as we all know. And unfortunately, we remain very vulnerable to it. McKinsey, for all of the distraction of Eskom and the havoc they wreaked on the lives of millions of South Africans, paid $120 million in fines. So, it's like a rounding error in the financials. Absolutely nothing. Much has changed since that lunch. We have seen the demise of Jacob Zuma. And although we have seen him again with his gallery of rogues reappearing in Parliament and MK Party, they really are a shadow of their former self. And yes, they are a meaningful force in KwaZulu-Natal, but really not in terms of the broader stage of South Africa. EFF, by and large, through MK Party, has become an irrelevant voice. I mean, they really are struggling for meaning and for a message, particularly with losses of half their leadership. I wonder how much was paid for that. We have Cyril Ramaphosa as president, and I think everyone will agree, he is not what we expected. We expected more. At the time he was elected, and certainly I was very involved at that stage, particularly in trying to fundraise for his elections. Someone said to me, who knows him well at the time, that he is non-strategic and indecisive. Those were the two words, and those two words kind of stuck with me in watching what has transpired subsequently. However, we do have something to thank him for, and I think that's not necessarily said that openly, and that is we can thank him for bringing the dawn of new democracy to South Africa. For the first time in 30 years, we are back to a democratic society. We are not under control of a singular party and a singular ideology and a singular point of view. We are back to a democracy where different voices are heard and can be heard. And that can only be good. So thank you, sir. So we do now have the Government of National Unity, GNU. And I think the best thing about it is that it had brought accountability back to the table. Different points of view, but accountability. People are now held to account. It is not so easy to just say, it's my way or no way, as ANC has gotten used to saying. I know that there is a lot of kind of political banter in the press. There was a lot of noise about the Expropriation Act, about the NHI bill. But, just looking at the Expropriation Act, it really was not irrelevant, really was something that, just codified and introduced into a process, a law that has already been there for years. So really what we're talking about is, political parties making a stand in the press rather than the meaning of the actual piece of legislation. The NHI bill, more problematic, but it will take years to get through courts, and there's, of course, no money for any of it. So, how relevant is something that you can't afford? But it makes for great headlines. From what I know in terms of how Cabinet operates, right, just business. Everyone is working together in recognition of you have to, in order for South Africa not to become a failed state. In terms of business, so I'm supposed to, represent more of a corporate voice. I think the domestic business confidence has never been higher. I mean, certainly not, I've been in the asset management industry for 30 years. The only time, and I was maybe too young to even recognize that, the only time I have seen that level of business confidence was in the 1990s, in that kind of golden era. We also have hearing and a lot more recognition from government that private-public partnerships towards absolutely anything, particularly in the infrastructure space or clean energy space, are essential. And there is now willingness from government to engage, and hopefully with more representation around the table in government, there will be more concrete implementation of projects, particularly infrastructure projects, than ever before. Now the question is, positivity is great, but where do we go from here in terms of, kind of tangibility of it? And 1994, post-1994, we lived through a completely golden decade of investment and excitement about South Africa, and as South Africa was in the spotlight, we even had a budget surplus under Trevor Manuel. But, how do you get back to that kind of era? How do you, incentivize or bring interest to South Africa again? And to be perfectly honest, it's hell of a challenge, and it will take a heck of a lot. So maybe, talking about Africa, I do look at Africa, and, I have spoken at international conferences, but to me, Africa is a bit of a forgotten continent. And that is despite the fact that it is the home to 30% of world's mineral reserves, 40% of gold, 90% of platinum. It has the fastest growing population in the world. However, it's also a continent that will be disproportionately, already is, disproportionately affected by climate change. If Trump thinks he's got a problem, or Europe thinks they've got a problem with refugees right now, political refugees, wait for climate refugees. It's estimated that by 2050 there will be 1.2 billion people heading north, escaping climate change in Africa. Eskom, we are all, celebrating the fact that there's end of load shedding. Well, how end of load shedding came about. They restarted all the coal power stations that were being mothballed. Based on Eskom's own predictions, by 2050, most of the farmland in Western Cape on the back of that will be gone. A lot of Western Cape will become a desert. And then, again, I know I'm being kind of very negative. I will come to some positivity just now. And, the other thing about Africa, and I think, we're all watching the emergence of AI and robotics, new technology. Africa is completely left behind in that space. We know it, absolutely nowhere. We're not even talking about it. And then, another footnote, it was BRICS, but I attended a conference, I was speaking at a conference in Miami, actually organized by the Saudis, perversely, but I sat in the audience and there was a panel of, again, international asset managers representing some of the largest asset management firms in the world, in the United States. And they started talking about, they were talking about US, they always want me to talk about the US, but eventually someone said, we should actually talk about the BRICS. Should we not put BRICS on the table? And, someone started talking about the BRICS, and as he was talking, well, he started listing, Brazil, Russia, India, China. So the BRICS are very relevant. And suddenly realized that he thinks of S as a plural letter. He doesn't think of it as a country. And everyone carried on, as if nothing has happened. So how do you overcome the challenge? And also you've got to ask yourself a question of how relevant are we really? We are loud. The International Court of Justice certainly proved that. Rugby proves that as well. But are we relevant in terms of investments and investment destination? And you know what? It's really difficult to say. Foreign money is still flowing out of South Africa. Inflation is high. Our budget deficit is growing. We are on the FATFA's grey list, which is not to be underestimated. It's kind of like a bunch of crooks, which we have to get out of. And then we have problems that we're all aware of, and problems that will not be resolved in our lifetime. And that's your unemployment, lack of education, the general poverty that surrounds us. And then we are playing against the background of a polarized world where, as we know, alliances, partnerships are in the spotlight. But more importantly, we are moving into a very, very transactional world. Trump, in particular, is all about deals, the art of a deal. Now, from a business perspective, business under the backdrop of, our largest trading partners are the US and the EU. Look how easily US can destabilize South Africa. Pull HIV, AIDS, and TB funding, like this. $400 million stopped 13,000 people facing unemployment. And we have one of the world's best HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment programs in the world. One man in the United States can turn off the lights. And here we are, photo ops with Putin. I wanted to say, well, why don't you phone Putin, see how much money he gives us? So I'll tell you something, it's not coming. So in a world of that, where things which affect millions of people can be derailed by one man on the back of what he thinks of South Africa, or Africa, for I think we know what he thinks of Africa, you can't really be standing back and thinking that it's business as normal. US will just, the money will just flow. Biden was a benign man at the end of the day. And then, the thing that one does need to worry about is the extent to which AI is leaving Africa behind, South Africa behind. There's no conversation in South Africa being held, not in any business circles that I'm aware of, about AI and, the impact of that. And, I attend these kind of CEO forums in the US, period. Only conversation on the table is what is the... And, I know that possibly not many of you in the room necessarily use ChatGPT, and you don't have to, but the latest news about a very lightweight version of ChatGPT, which was released by the Chinese a couple of days ago, made global news. It's a very lightweight model, but it can already answer the question of how do we make a bomb. Doesn't necessarily answer and give you the details of a nuclear bomb, but very benign tax regime. Surprisingly, huge efforts are being made to remove South Africa off the grey list. And we are actually seeing some, but not enough, white-collar prosecutions, which is one of the things that FATFA looks at in terms of judging the country's kind of, credit or risk rating. Now, but the reality of it is right now, transactional world, what matters is which side do we choose to play for, and which side do we deal with. We have to choose. I know that there is a great political, very diplomatic language which talks to kind of the middle road, not taking sides. Well, unfortunately, I don't think the world is there. I think we're in a polarized world where you do get to choose and have to choose a side. Now, what are the consequences? Look, we can choose the East, we can choose the West. If we choose the East, theoretically, China and India provide massive consumer bases for exports. We could diversify our trading partners away from EU and away from US, potentially unlock infrastructure investment into Africa, although what we have thought, what China has experienced in terms of investing in Africa is not exactly, a winning formula. We would maintain the BRICS status for what it's worth, and really, I still have to see BRICS doing something, with the new development bank being, nothing that one can speak about. Of course, choosing the East, we risk becoming a victim of Trump's policies. In fact, I think we can guarantee that. Trade imbalances, again, if we choose the East, can we really compete on price? We're just going to face more Chinese imports coming in, with no tariffs being applied. And of course, the risk of any dependence on debt and debt dependence. And then there's almost over. I know that you are waiting for the highlight of today. And then choosing the West. Obviously, we have then continued access to EU and US markets where we already have well-established trading treaties. You can guarantee a much faster progress in technology, adoption of technology. More Western investment coming in usually brings in technology, doesn't steal technology. We are more familiar in terms of culturally familiar with doing business with the West rather than with the East. And, the West, for all of its problems at the moment, it's an alliance with countries which still value democracy. And, I look at what we're going through now, and at the end of the day, 4 years here, 5 years there, do not make or break democracy. Democracy is the foundations of fairness and a fair system. Trump will come and Trump will go. It's 4 years of popcorn hour. He'll do things, people will criticize, he wants some headlines, and then he'll be gone. And someone else comes along. Democracy doesn't die. So if we want to align ourselves with the concept of democracy and live up to the constitution that we have, then, I wouldn't exactly be leaning towards the East. But, that's just me. Again, just talking to choosing the West, we would increase South Africa's standing on the global stage, re-ratings from rating agencies, and unlocking of capital investment. It's not going to happen if we go the East route. And domestic optimism, which is very important. Being positive about South Africa, which doesn't mean that just because we align ourselves with the West that we won't become victims of Trump's policies. We might. But there's a host of other reasons why that would be a more growth-oriented policy for South Africa to follow. Just that, growth. So that is really that. As I said, I don't think that bipartisan non-alignment approach, which is what's in the press continuously, is really that easy to achieve. I think we will have to choose. But on a positive side, and I'm really concluding now, maybe it's a bit of a corny joke, at least
legal eagles, so I need to count my words when I'm in front of them. They will collect at a later stage these little white forms. You are welcome. If you want to ask a question, write it down and just pass it on to them. We'll have a question and answer session later or after we have done the award. So we will now have a short break. It will be about 20 minutes. Please enjoy some nice tea and whatever outside, and then let us come back. Let me ask that we come back by, say, 20 minutes past 3. Am I right? Yeah? Okay. Right. Oh, 10 minutes. Make it in. Right, make it, 20 minutes. Okay. Okay. we will have the opportunity to enjoy each other's company and some good wine and other refreshments after all the proceedings. The reception will be held at the pool, so please don't despair. There will be enough time really to talk and to greet and to enjoy each other's company. Ladies and gentlemen, are we ready to start? It's now my opportunity to welcome Dr. Cloete. We have completed our studies at the Stellenbosch School of Public Administration, Public Leadership. He has continued his studies to become or to achieve a doctorate, and he is of great help to municipalities to help turn things around at that level. Dr. Cloete, your dedication, your commitment to service delivery and to ensure that things improve at municipal level, it really is noticed by all of us, and for that we sincerely have a real appreciation. He's also a person that is quite involved in his own community, operating a radio station there, community radio station, and is also doing quite a number of other things.
Mr. Gregor Jaker, CEO of Sygnia, Magda Wierzycka, I hope I've got that right, and coach of the back-to-back Rugby World Champs, Johan, Rassie, Erasmus. I like to call you Professor Erasmus for all that you have achieved in this country. And to you, my brothers and sisters and fellow South Africans, it's a wonderful privilege and an honor for me to be speaking here this afternoon. I consider this a great honor and privilege to be at this conference. I also bring you greetings from the University of the Free State and the newly appointed rector, Professor Esther Klopper. And I also carry with you greetings from the Center of Gender and Africa Studies, headed by Professor Stephanie Kaywood. I also bring you greetings from my hometown. This town has gifted this nation with the most Springbok rugby players and officials, with 14 rugby clubs with a collective history of more than 900 years. It is the rugby headquarters of South Africa and home to South Africa's latest Springbok captain, Salman Murat. There is no other town in South Africa that have produced more World Cup winners than Paarl. And a week ago, no other town. And a week ago, Paarl bowled themselves into the history books with a match-winning 20 overs of spin bowling, led by the Prince of Paarl, Bjorn Fortuin, for the Paarl Royals at Boland Stadium in Paarl. Paarl is also home to KC 107.7, the Child of Democracy formed in 1996 by the young people of Paarl. This is also the town in South Africa where the 5 churches came together in 1926 to form the Athlone Institute, and through their own blood, sweat and tears, they built their own high school when the government refused to invest in the education of children not classified as white. The work of the institution continues to this day. And last year, this institution invested 900,000 rand in bursaries in the Paarl community. I am from Paarl, and I encourage you to visit our beautiful town. Mrs. de Klerk, it was once her home. She knows exactly what I'm talking about. But more importantly, it is from Paarl where South Africa's first democratic president, Nelson Mandela, took his first steps to freedom after FW de Klerk announced his release from prison. What a joyous and momentous occasion this was. I was in the crowd as a young 20-year-old in the crowd that waited the entire day at the Grand Parade in Cape Town to witness this historic occasion that set South Africa on an entirely new trajectory. Today we're here to reflect on the consequence of that speech and our position in the world today from a government and administration and service delivery perspective. We are not here to talk about sport and power as much, because I leave that to Rassie, who has captured the imagination of the world with his bold leadership, innovation, vision, and foresight. I'm here today to remind you that yes, we are the world rugby champs, but we are also the undisputed champion when it comes to inequality. South Africa is the most unequal country in the world, according to the World Bank, with rising levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. This is something that we are confronted with on a daily basis, and at times it would seem that our efforts to push back is in vain. At times it seems that we are oblivious to this. And so this afternoon, in the 20 minutes allocated to me, I wish to, by way of example, examine South Africa's position in the world today from a government, administration, and service delivery perspective through the futures triangle lens introduced by Pakistani-Australian scholar Sohail Inayatullah in 1997. He talks about the weight of the past, the pull of the future, and the push of the present. I will focus on local government, as this is my area of interest and my area of ongoing research. The global consensus on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and how we localize them will form the background to this canvas of our discussion. You see, we can debate about Zuma and Zilla, and Musi and Malema. What matters most, in my view, is what we do locally, in our local communities. It is at the local government sphere where we feel the pulse of that community. And sometimes we can stand on podiums and talk all these things, but what is it that we're doing and investing locally? It is at local government where people experience the love or the indifference of the state. We live in a VUCA environment, an environment that can be described as volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. What is right yesterday is not necessarily right tomorrow. And so it is in this chaos that we hope to bring clarity, so that when we leave here today, that we have a clear understanding about where we are in this world. So let me start in by the weight of the past and get the past out of the way. When we talk about the weight of the past, we are referring to those factors that are preventing us from moving forward. Those stubborn facts that we cannot wish or pray away, those facts of history that remain with us. One of my academic heroes is the late Professor Sampieter Blanche. He wrote a book, South Africa, A History of Inequality. He argued that in this country of ours, we have a triangle that looks like this. In the one angle, we've got the white elite, rooted in the historical privileges amassed before 1994, and that pattern continues. In the other corner, you have the black elite with new money, who are also not afraid to flaunt that, new elites. And then you have a predominantly black majority living in abject poverty in this country that we cannot wish away. When I say black, I mean all those were not classified as white. The research indicates, colleagues, that 53% of South Africans live below the poverty line, with 20% of children experiencing stunted growth due to malnutrition. It is in this country that the Sunday Times reported a couple of years back that children in the Eastern Cape, out of desperation, are eating sand to stay alive. That it's in the Eastern Cape where a mother took her own life and that of her children because she could not continue. She didn't have answers for them. My high school teacher, Mr. Abu Solomon, sent me this message early in the week, reflecting on what happened at the Stilfontein mines. He wrote, "Who are the masterminds in the background profiting from illegal mining? Who are they?" That's the question that should be answered. Illegal miners criminals, whatever one wants to call them, do it. Because as one miner said as he emerged from the shaft, I did it because I want to eat. I did it because I want to eat. It is the same when I see my fellow South Africans on a Monday morning, scratching in the bins in my street, looking for food. It breaks my heart that every Monday morning, the poor get to the middle class, leave his suburbs to look for food in bins. That, my friends, is the weight of the past. This is what Anton Rupert referred to when he said, if they don't eat, we don't sleep. The National Development Plan, as articulated by government, is the consensus of all the political parties in this country of what is wrong. What is this thing holding us back? They say too few people work. The standard of education for most black learners in this country is of a poor quality. I can take you to the former school where I taught, Charleston Hill Secondary in Paarl. If I do my finger like that, it's an asbestos building, it will collapse. It's a terrible institution that projects to these children that we don't matter. Compare that to Paarl Gymnasium and Paarl Boys High. It's two different worlds. And so the standard of education in our country is something that we cannot escape. Infrastructure is poorly located. Spatial patterns continue. The economy is overly and sustainably resource intensive. The economy is, the widespread burden of disease puts pressure on the public health system. Public services are uneven and often of a very poor quality, and corruption is widespread. And then finally, the report concludes that South Africa remains a divided society. How do we explain that after 30 years, we still don't know who's African and who's not? There are some that are African and some that are not. We are still a divided nation. For 90 minutes, yes, we are divided, 100% united, and then elkeen maar steeds in sy eie hoekie after that 90 minutes. So this myth that rugby unites us, but after that 90 minutes, we go into our separate corners in our own realities. That is the tragedy of our country. And so, colleagues, at the same time of the publication of this book, Professor Sampieter Blanche published another book in 2012 that I believe should be compulsory reading for every single South African. He did us a favor because he published it in Afrikaans and in English. And that book should be translated into all of the other languages in this country. The book is called Lost in Transformation. In Afrikaans, Verdeelde Land. In this, he says, our transformation is failing. Our public service is failing because we did not address the legacy of apartheid. Just when you land on Cape Town International Airport, just look to your left, and that legacy speaks so loud. He says we have not the immoral and inhumane system of apartheid was not replaced by a more moral and caring society. The new black elite is guilty of an extravagant get-rich-quickly mentality. I want to get rich as quickly as possible so that I can also say it's my turn to eat. The perpetuation of this unequal power relations between the non-racial elite, us in this room, we are the elites of our society. This alliance between the non-racial elite and the poor at the outside of the room. He says there's a lack of social solidarity and proud South Africanism. And the political economic system of the past, of the last 100 years, that has continued. We have seen poverty and unemployment increase. And so government, in its own assessment of its 30 years in power, review of local government notes that there's 270,000 people working in municipalities. And the problems in municipalities, government is very clear on that. It's down to political, spatial disparities. There's the inability to deliver service. Almost a third of municipalities have become dysfunctional. There's high vacancy rate. There's premature departures of key officials. And in short, we have really just messed up local government. that sphere that is supposed to bring hope to communities. Because you see, I can't get an appointment with the president, but surely my local councillor, that is my first point of call where I can interact. And so our best chance, if we do not get local government right, the entire state project fails. It's at local government where we need to strengthen and tighten the screws. This has been confirmed by research that we've conducted over the last 4 years in a research partnership with the local government SETA. And this is the context of public administration in our country. The weight of the past. Unless we address this demon of our past, we will not be able to move forward. That's the first one, the weight of the past. But there's also the pull of the future, of what is possible. The type of society that we have to imagine and reimagine if we have not yet imagined that. The place where all of us feel welcome. A sense of belonging, this better life for all that we so dreamed about in 1994. This dream that has been deferred, that everybody has a place in the sun. The poet John Shaw says the future is not some place we're going to, but one we're creating. China is very clear. We use the example of the East and the West, Magda. But China is very clear where it wants to be in 2050. Very clear. It says there we want to be, and then they behave their way back from the future. What is it that we need to do today? And so the pull of the future is that we had this future. In 2014, we said we will halve poverty. That 2014 came and gone, and we didn't meet that. In 2030, we said we will be far. Government reviewed its national development plan and said we have not managed to get even to scratch the surface of that. And so, colleagues, unless we behave differently and get away from short-term thinking, very little will change in South Africa. And the pull of the future is this ethical, developmental, and capable state with active citizens participating in shaping society. The National Development Plan is very clear, is that we cannot leave all the thinking to government. It says it has to be in a partnership between business, between the academic community, between government and the community. It is that type of partnership that gets us out of this governance mess. This is what we have been doing in Paarl since last year through a program called Unlocking Youth Opportunities. Through a conversation like this on the 11th of March, we will have LinkedIn, Microsoft, and the services SETA having a discussion about how do we keep unlocking opportunities. And in the room last year, we had business, we had government, we had the academics, and then we had community. So what is the pull of the future? Colleagues, equal access to education and health. I don't know how we're going to get this right, but we cannot have this system where I've got a toothache and I have to wait 2 weeks to have it extracted at a public hospital. If I have medical aid, I can have it extracted immediately. How do we create a more equal society where all of us have equal access to health care? We've got the best brains in this country. Let's put them and say, let all of us enjoy the same benefits. If there's one thing that COVID taught us, is that when COVID hit us, we all had access to great health care. And so you may smirk at it and say, but how do we get the rest also on health care? How do we make sure that everybody has access to quality education? It can't be the middle class, us the elite, enjoying the fruits. And what Anton Rupert said, to hell with the rest, let them suffer. If they don't eat, we don't sleep. And so the pull of the future must be what Elizabeth Zitzman said the other evening on Laat Aand met Rian. She says, I'm so sick and tired of the moaning and the moaning. She said, if one of us, if we that are privileged, just help one child, imagine the type of society we would have if we get one child educated, we the privileged in society. Secondly, the pool of the future is economic reconciliation. We have to have, there's enough for everybody's need, but there's not enough for everybody's greed in South Africa. There's enough, but we've got a greedy minority that are bent on taking and taking and taking. Thirdly, the future is coalition governance maturity. Coalitions are here to stay. Our political system is designed like that. And so in 2016, we had 28 coalitions. In 2021, we had 78 coalitions. In this local government election in 2026, we will have more than 100 coalitions. In the Western Cape, we've got 15 coalitions, fragile coalitions. But you know, we cannot leave everything to the politicians. We will have to find our voice as civil society. And the last point of the future, I'm privileged to teach with the University of Kiel on a master's program on international cooperation. My German colleagues tell me they've got a degree now in digital public management. I said, wow, I want this. I want this for us because we have to prepare our young people for the future. They're talking about digital public management and using AI. I meet this colleague at the city of Johannesburg and how they're using AI and technology to increase public participation. And that conversation, we've invited him to Paul on the 11th of March to come and talk to us about governance and AI and how government can use that. Colleagues, I believe we've got the best brain in society. The push of the present is the final in this triangle. What is it that we must do? If that is the preferred future, not on paper, we behave ourselves into the future. The future is not owned by speeches. The future is aimed by actions. Deliberate, intentional actions to claim that future that we all so desire. And so the push of the present is that we need to move from good governance to great governance. If a small country like Britain can call themselves Great Britain and not Good Britain, why should we settle for good? We must be great in what we do. And so I'm interested in conversations and research about great governance. I don't want to be good. We started a podcast 3 years ago called Great Governance ZA. We're turning that into a book shortly. And we wanted to find municipal officials who are great, not good. To my surprise, we have found excellent people in this town, and we are on the mission to change this narrative that everything is horrible in local government. There are some excellent officials that I would like to share with you shortly. How do we push to the present? John Maxwell says, if there's no faith in the future, there's no power in the present. If there's no faith in the future, there's no power in the present. What is it that we can do? I was amazed the other day, and I'm yet to understand this, when an economist said his advice would be, stay in South Africa, but take your money out. It just doesn't make sense to me, man. I'm not an economist. But it sounds so unpatriotic to me to say, stay in South Africa, enjoy the benefits of South Africa, but migrate your money. Take it out as quickly as possible. So that I don't understand it. And again, I'm saying I'm not an economist, and I would like to have a conversation about that. The push of the president in terms of public administration. Wales is the first country in the world to create an independent office called the Commissioner of the Future. It's like a minister of the future. That's his job. His job is the future. That person, the Minister of the Future, is a unique position in Wales that provides advice and support on sustainable development, encourages government and public bodies to take long-term view in terms of policy and actions. Thirdly, what must we do? We must continue to ask difficult questions locally, even if it makes some angry. Anger them. But we need to ask difficult questions. If there is one thing that Rassie has done so well, is to push the needle, to think outside the box, to challenge the status quo, like Steve Jobs says. Our job is not to be obedient. Our job is to question society and say, why are things this way, and how can we change it? We are not supposed to be in a box. If we move society forward, we have to ask difficult questions of one another. If this was church, I would say amen. Amen. So difficult questions. By asking difficult questions is how we move forward. We dream, there's this poem that says, this quote that says, some people see things as they are and say, why? We dream things that were and say, why not? Why can't we do that? Things don't have to be this way. And based on our research and international examples in public administration, we have developed what is called the Governance 5 IQ. And we said in any situation, and we've Africanized Michael Barber was Tony Blair's Minister of Delivery. We've tweaked it and played around with the model, and we've Africanized it. And we said, and this is what we must do today. Every institution must ask, every municipality, why do we do what we do? Are we here to lead, or are we here to loot? How do we do it? How do we do it? What is our strategy? How do we do it? With who do we do it? How will we know that we are on track? And that is why we need AI to help us. The municipalities produce voluminous documents on the IDP. Technology, and I'm still astonished by this, we can put that IDP through AI, and it could be able to develop patterns in there. And so how will we know that we are on track? By using the best technology to say we are on track in the type of society that we want. If we're not on track, what is the consequence of not being on track? The Bito municipality in the Southern Cape recently appointed Alan Paulson, and his title is Manager Governance and Consequence Management. And so he is the person that goes around to check what are the consequences for bad behavior? Because the problem in a lot of municipalities and in society is that people get away. It's like the Auditor General every year says the same thing, so people listen, but they're not hearing. And so there has to be consequence for bad behavior. And then finally, how do we lead and learn? These 5 questions. How do we preserve knowledge? How do we harvest knowledge? How do we use knowledge to better society? The push of the present, colleagues, is an important what we do today. I like what they say in Singapore. We have to have a pragmatic approach to governance. In Singapore, they say it doesn't matter if it's a white cat or a black cat. If the cat catches mice, it's a good cat. That's a great cat, yeah. Sorry. And so, if the CEO is white or the CEO is black, if the lights are on, let's all rejoice. That is pragmatism. We need a pragmatic approach to governance because we are moving away from ideology to pragmatism. What works? It is of no use we produce papers and volumes of research, but we cannot take our research to better society. And so you see, you don't know what you don't know. In conclusion, the problem in our country is the following. You know, when we were small, there was a thing that says, on your marks, get set, conference. On your marks, get set, imbizo. And we talk about the same thing over and over and over. I don't know if it makes us feel better to talk about the problems all the time. And I'm interested in solutions. The EFF, in a press statement on the 25th of January, says the following. Billions of rand meant for social programs, including HIV/AIDS treatments, are returned unspent every year. In 2023, the Gauteng Health Department underspent 1.6 billion of the District Health Service budget, while the Eastern Cape Health Department lost conditional grant funding close to similar inefficiencies. These failures have left people vulnerable. Colleagues, we believe that the Futures Triangle, together with our Governance 5IQ and accompanying governance culture, have the potential to unlock deep, purposeful discussions in municipalities. At the University of the Free State, we are a proud knowledge partner to local government. We do not want to be academic tourists. Instead, we are determined not to just produce knowledge for understanding, but for action and to liberate people. We are not interested in research for the sake of research. We keep pointing out to decision makers what must be done. I'm on record as one government department, we submitted a report to them about what is wrong. I had to chase him for 9 months. 9 months to say, this is our recommendations, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? Every week I called him until we did something about it. Once you know, we have to develop a thick skin in South Africa. Here in the Western Cape, we say dikkou. Jy moet maar aanhou en dikkou. Once you know better, as Maya Angelou said, you must do better. The GNU has provided evidence-based policy making as a key cornerstone, but I say again, we cannot leave all the thinking to government. Like a good lawyer in court, I put it to you. The attention of the world is on us. We have a history of inequality in this country. We've got the weight of the past. If we continue to ignore it, we will not be able to go forward. But there's one thing that we have, colleagues, is agency. What you have been entrusted with, your privileged position in society, wherever you find yourself in, there's a responsibility on you to use that privileged position to better and to further South Africa into the future by behaving differently. You cannot wait on the president. What you have been entrusted with, use that to better society. We move now from government to governance. And that means that we co-create with government. We do not leave it to government to say, you deliver services and we just receive it. No, we co-design with government at the beginning of that. And so government, they serve on the behest of the people. We co-create. We need to be fearless. We need to be a do and dare people. We need new solutions. The old no longer works. And as we move into this bright new future, that we have to make sure that we lead society and make sure there's an acronym that says GTSD. That says get the done. You decide what that S is. We have to have people in our organizations with very high GTSD scores, because there are too many people in our organizations with low GTSD scores that can talk and talk and talk, but nothing happens. I thank you very much for the privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, that Minister of the Future, that sounds like a job for me, you know. You just watch the future coming. But thank you, Dr. Cloete. I thank you for making us uncomfortable and for making us sit upright, because that's what we need. And thank you for your absolute honesty in terms of what we should do to solve the challenges that we face. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Rassie has decided to leave early, or is he still here? Oh, Rassie, over to you. Welcome.
This is probably the wrong way to start. But Dr. Klerk, what was the third step? The push of the presence. Push of the presence? I thought he was talking about the Springbok losing coach. Sorry about that joke. No, in all honesty, I'm totally out of my comfort zone, standing in front of people, and the level of speeches which you guys are talking about amazes me, and the knowledge that you guys have of the different things is something that I really would like to catch on to and to try to understand, because my whole life I've never been into the political side of things and how it works and why people think a certain way. And just the three things you said there made me think. First thing is, please excuse my Afrikaans English accent. I'm not great at English. I grew up in the Eastern Cape in Dispatch, where English wasn't spoken often, and then I went to Bloemfontein, where it wasn't the upgrade in English. But yeah, I'll get to the award and the honor of getting it. I'll get to that now, and to Mrs. de Klerk and the whole foundation, and to say thank you, because that's the first thing on my mind when I think about this, is to say thank you. Also a bit embarrassed, because it's definitely not just me. It's a lot of people that makes the Springboks work, that made the change in the Springboks and how we do things. It's certainly not just me. It's a lot of people, and I would like to elaborate a little bit on that. But just to get my mind a little bit off that, I'm just going to tell you an example of how I can run out of bandwidth in English. So this friend of mine, his name was Os Durant. He played prop. You can hear it's a very Afrikaans name, Os Durant, and we were touring in Australia, and we've been on a 6-week tour in those days. And we haven't had a lot of real steaks, meat, South African steaks. And we get to this one restaurant on the 6th week, the last week of our tour, and the waiter came and she came over there and she says, "What would you like us like?" And we all say, "There's steak on the menu, like a proper steak with fat on it and everything." And we all said steak. And after a while, the lady came back and she said, she just want to know, how would you guys like your steak? You like it medium? And us said, "Then large. We want it large, not medium." So those things happen. So yeah, first thing is when I say thank you for that, I say thank you on behalf of the South African supporters. First of all, I think we don't know what we have in South Africa when it comes to support. Other countries don't have Black Friday. They don't have people going to malls or to school grounds or to school halls and fill it up and Tiger Valley, or get together on a rugby field or watch it together at home. It's unbelievable what the advantage we have as South Africans, and that's not purely by numbers. I talk about passion, and we feel all of that always, and that's what drives the Springboks. There was a time where it was just ourselves driving us, because we were number 6, 7 in the world, and we were, it's difficult to associate with losers, and we quickly understood that if we don't change something, the people won't be proud. The people won't associate with us. They don't feel better, as you rightly say. I do sometimes think we confuse happiness with hope. I think sometimes when we win, it's 60, 70, 80 minutes of happiness, and then when you go home, the people who suffer, who's hungry, or doesn't have a roof over their head, that they was happy for those 80 minutes, but then they're sad again. And then the hope is not for every single person who watched the Springboks play to become a Springbok, because there's only been 900 or something like that in the history of the game. So why do I say that? Because I want to credit SA Rugby. I want to credit the people at SA Rugby. I want to credit the people involved in, not SA Rugby, just the head office. I'm talking about the franchises. I'm talking about, there's on the ground level, scouts and people. And I might quickly explain this, and if you guys can check me on my 30 minutes so I don't go over that. We started in 2013 a program which was called the Elite Players Development Program. And when we started it, we said, but are we going to make this fair? Because we want to change, and we want the whole country to support our rugby teams, our under-20s, our women's team, our sevens, our junior bokke, our SA team, and when the Springboks play. And, you know, you can't just support a team when there's two coloured boys on the wing, and everybody says, yeah, it's in their genes. They can just play wing. That's that. And funny enough, when I played in the Eastern Province, played in the Free State and Cheetahs, coached there, and I coached here at the Stormers. When I got to the Stormers in Cape Town, there was a wing called Geo Aplon. Very much like Cheslin Colby, the same type of player. And I said to Cheslin, but you guys are, like everybody tells you that, you start believing it. It's in your genes, you can just play wing. You guys are all small, you play wing. And I asked Geo, why are most of you guys playing wing? And because the big boys also play wing, you know, the big colored boys. And he said to me, it's easy, you know, when you give to, if a guy doesn't have the access to infrastructure, if that's the right word, or rugby fields and tackle equipment and tackle bags or whatever, it's two boys coming together there on a piece of grass or in a road, and it's sometimes not even a rugby ball, it's a, you know, it's a full socks or something like that, and they use that as a ball. And he said, what do you learn when you play against each other, touch rugby all the time? He says you definitely, I don't know if you can hear me if I'm walking around, he says you're definitely not going to learn how to clean out, or how to jump in a line out, or how to scrum in the mall, or how to steal a ball in a ruck. You're going to learn how to sidestep, how to chip, how to goose walk, how to round a guy, and that's what wings does. So if somebody doesn't come in and help those guys, because their fathers and grandfathers were, the right of them playing for South Africa was taken away. And so they also didn't have the advantage of playing international rugby, playing provincial rugby even, and club rugby was a thing. And so that's where, and the same with our black boys in our team, you know, everybody said, yeah, no, there isn't really good props there. And then you look at Oxton Chen now and Bongi, and you look at Trevor, and you look at Tooks who's coming through at the Sharks. And the problem was, again, it was the access to knowledge. It was the access to people who, their dads and their uncles who's played maybe provincial and for the Springboks, and they didn't have that. And we started this elite players development pathway in 2013. I was the high performance manager then, and we wanted to do it as fair as possible, because I think a lot of people think when we talk transformation, it's white out, black in. You know, and transformation in any other country means change. If you change something, that's transform, you know. Ek weet nie of julle weet van 'n skoenlapper hoe hy verander. But it means change. And it became such a nasty word in South Africa, and we said, but how do we do this naturally? And unfortunately, you can't start there at the top at the Springboks in 2013, I'm talking, and just say, guys, we've got a quota system, and I'll get to that now. Because I know my whole coaching philosophy goes around, if a player feels safe in the environment, if you don't embarrass him about something that he can't control, and he can express himself, then we'll have a happy team. But if somebody is nervous to be himself, to take him out of his, create a database of 75 players. Otherwise, 50, 75. And we have to have 3 in each position. Sorry for people who doesn't follow rugby. I'm just going to explain this. So if you have a loose set, you know, number 1, there must be 3 number 1s, 3 number 2s, 3 number 3s. But if you have the 3 number 1s and all 3 is white, you go until you have 2 you know, players of color also there. But you don't throw away the 3 white ones, but you have now 5 number 1s. And even in some positions we got to number 7. If you say hookers, we're going to have 3 hookers. Okay, the first one is a player of color. The second one is a white boy. But okay, the third one is also a white boy. Okay, we're going until we have in each position. And in that way, we were not white out, black in. We build a database of players that are now playing for the Springboks. And that was in 2013. And the only thing that we did with those players was, it wasn't even expensive. It was getting knowledge to them. It was getting mentors to them. It was getting them nutrition. It was moving them sometimes from a school which maybe didn't play rugby to another school, which I don't think is ideal. I think it would be great if we can uplift those schools where they are and not always move them from one to another. And when we talk about that, well, that's what stands there. I'm proud, and it makes me a bit emotional because I feel sad for the fans and the supporters. You know, we play for them and what we produce, and then, you know, I get it, but the guys who did the 2013 Elite Players Development Pathway and the guys who signed it off, they were the heroes there. And the people on the ground, the scouts who get the fussies through and get the guys through, that Jaden Hendricks and the boys, and you know, everybody that's playing now. And in that Elite Players Development Group, we don't have quotas where, and I hate that word, and I say that in a way that I think it's embarrassing on both sides. If you think I'm here as a quota, and then the white boys think I'm not playing because there's a quota coming in. And I was so against that. And the moment we started opening up about that in our Springbok team, and we said, but listen, yeah, we're going to change. We're going to call it change. And that is how we operate, how we select the team, how we train, how we select the management. It's going to be purely on what you put out and how you get better, how you take ownership. You might not be the best player as you come into the system, but hell, if you've got the potential, we're going to coach the hell out of you until I'll tell you are good enough. And so, first of all, thank you. I mean, what President de Klerk did and what the foundation does, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But it's for everybody out there who's been involved, and that includes the supporters. Just maybe a little bit of where are we in the world? I think the world, I think all of us know the saying now, hulle weet nie wat ons weet nie. And I think one of the speakers spoke about, I don't think other countries has to make the plans which we have to make on the run. I'm not talking rugby, I'm talking the guy who doesn't have food and he sees the lights is out and he puts on an orange bib and he controls it. The traffic there by the traffic light. And even the traffic officers listens to him, you know. He allowed him to run and he's got a gachi next to him. And as you drive by, you throw out a R5 and the gachi picks it up and that's how the guy makes money. And, you know, we don't have electricity always, and I see maybe in February it's coming again. Is it tonight? Okay, tonight. But I mean, we moan about it, but we get around it. And if that happens I've coached in other countries where everything works, and then sometimes when you get to the rugby field, they also expect everything just to work. And South Africans are not like that. And it makes us a very, very special country that we find a way. And I'm proud almost of that. I don't want our lives to become so easy that, you know, we take the township boy and his township tackle and we incorporate that, you know, the way he do a township tackle, or the private boy that, you know, knows this hell of a game plan, or the normal government school lighty that, you know, he's there off the farm and he doesn't really, he just wants to scrum all the day, you know. So, and I think if we understand, if we take the strength of our diversity, we are unbelievably blessed with different things that we can do. But other countries can't do. They one or the same, one track mind. They do, oh, we've got great, this, great, what's that word there? Or and I'm not nailing them. I lived in islands, wonderful people. Yes, now I must count my words so I don't get it. But they once made a headline that when a swan was killed, it was on the swan, you know, bird. They were looking for the swan for 7 to 10 days. and I was thinking, I don't even know if we have swans in South Africa. But then again, the Irish people are so good. They were so good to me and my family when we were there. It's such a safe place, you know. I never somebody. I missed actually the IASs and the tiri, you know. We understand now. Let them go by, pick up the guys. We're used to that. If you press a hooter there, klein stuurwieletjie, take it to the you know. It's a very controlled system, and I think we envy that. We envy that everything must work, everything was, and I think we must strive towards that. But I also think we must celebrate that we find a way around things and not always be hurtful. And when somebody moans you, we chatted as a bunch of players. In the first World Cup, they all said, "Oh, we must inspire, we must inspire." I said, "We're 6 in the world. How can we inspire? You know, well, let's first win." And they agree, sort of, but not really. On the Twitter account and Instagram, says, "See, how do you think you're playing?" "No, lack. I said, "No, you're playing swap. Don't believe what they're saying on that Twitter about you. Play. You can ask you. I said, play better. Don't listen what the people on social. We get like 30 likes and you think you played better. No." And we said we're only going to inspire once people see the main thing, which is our job is coaching hard, working hard, and on that field, giving everything for it. Then the people will be happy. And even still, if you lose, they will still be unhappy. So until you win, and then we might inspire. So Mapimpi came in the Japan World Cup, and he came and he wrote something on his arm. Now, you know, Mapimpi, he didn't speak a word English. It's like we just head nodded and when we chatted to each other. He worked with me, no. So if it wasn't Swandile stick, I swear there was one stage where I probably would have, I didn't trust Mapimpi because he fell and he's in the game against Australia and his knee twisted and I went to the doctor, ask him what's wrong. And he said, "Oh, no," and he finished the game. And afterwards I went to Mapimpi and I said, "Mapimpi, what's wrong?" He said, "Only my knee. And I said, "No, man, foolishly. Stupid." I went to the coaches and I said, I think this boy is and he's loafing. And I'll never forget, Swandile said to me, wait, come with me. And he called in Mapimpi and they spoke. I couldn't hear what they were saying. But I just saw Toga did it. And he tapped up Mapimpi on and he said, "Go." And he said, "Hey, I think this guy tore his meniscus in his knee." And I felt so bad and went back home, out for 6 months, meniscus tear, but he grinded through the game, didn't go off, and I thought he was. So for us to start understanding and minding each other and just taking a little bit more time, I think it will really take us far. I actually forgot what I was busy saying, but it will come back to me. So the first thing is, was Mapimpi that wrote on his hand in the World Cup. And it irritates me, sideshows, when we're on the field, because I want us to think about rugby and how we're going to win. And Mapimpi had this, and he scored 4 tries, and he kissed that, and I thought, just beautiful tries. But what are you doing, man? Why are you doing that? And he came to me and he said, "No, there was a lady that was killed in the post office here in Cape Town. I don't know if you guys can remember that." And he said, "No, he played for her." And I thought, okay. And we then went through to the semi-finals. And then the team started saying, "Krijg my bietjie hoendervleis." What's it? A buddy of mine is Afrikaans said, when he gets hoendervleis, he said, I get chicken pox. It's goosebumps, eh? Goosebumps, yeah. And the team started saying, "But let's play for South Africa, because we're in the semi-finals. Even if we lose, we're 4th, we're not 6th." And I said, and the guys started gathering social media stuff, and we got a screen inside the team room. And it's just people sending in messages, and it just got more and more and more. And it was Xhosa and English and Afrikaans and farm boys and a guy sitting there in a village and a young boy who knows all the Springbok teams' names and he pronounced it wrong. And we just went on Friday nights when we were lonely there in Japan, and we just went and watched that screen. And that started the whole thing where we wanted to share and we wanted to play for South Africa. And the boys now still talk. The try line is our home. It's South Africa. The moment anybody gets close to the try line, they get close to South Africa. And by that, I'm not sucking up or trying to be emotional, but it does get emotional. And sometimes you give you everything and you lose, and we understand that people are upset. But I get the feeling South Africans we are starting to understand the players, the media, you guys who watch it. I might not always understand the politicians, but yeah, and we want to say thank you from our side when we get stuff like this. I mean, see us, a guy from when you were small, he didn't have toys, he played with brick. That was his car. In the Spats, he would have put mags on for the brick. But and today he's probably the guy who's one of the most well-known players and captains in the world. Now, every boy won't reach that, but I think we can give every guy a fair chance, and not all of them will become Springboks. But I think if we keep on doing projects like that elite player development pathway, where we slowly give them all the tools that they need, and then when they're on top, then it's purely picked on talent. I'm giving you my word. As we pick the team currently in the Springbok team, we don't count numbers. We count talent. And then the team runs out like it runs out. So where are we in the world? We're currently number one. I think what we must do is stay nice and humble and don't put it out there all the time. And like we do in South Africa, we just, sometimes not quietly, but we just go on with our thing and find a way, because that's our motto in the Springbok team, You can't say no for a plan. You give you opportunity, we decide together on what's our plan on Saturday. It's like a bunch of lions, the one lion can't say, there's not a lack of game plan, I'm not going to hunt like that. Then he's not going to eat. So our principle is, we're all in, we all eat at the end of the day, we all drink out of the cup, we all celebrate with South Africa, and in our team, we write down the things that bothers us. Culturally, we cater for Muslim, Christian, colored, Indian, Afrikaans, English, and it's difficult to manage, but we just say, as long as what you do, let that not stop the Springbok way of doing things. And the Springbok way of doing things is doing it for the whole of South Africa. And that's what we hope to do. And I think I've got nothing more to say. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all of you that made that decision, and all of you that made this possible. And yeah, hope it continues. Thank you.
Wow, Rassie. My father always dreamt of me becoming a Springbok player. Hopefully, one day. So, it's now a very, very big moment for us, and I just want to ask Brenda, one of the colleagues, just to come a bit closer with the award. And then I would like Elita to step forward to perhaps just bring a few words. Yeah.
Rassie, for me, was a great pleasure to get to know you. I mean, what we've heard today is what it encapsulates what you've given to South Africa, how you inspire the players, how they feel accepted for what they are. And then the unity. Everybody unites behind the game. It doesn't matter if you are pink, yellow, or whatever color, you are a South African. I, being a Greek, after some years, FW used to call me the Greekana. So, it's your personality. Don't underestimate your personality. It has ripple effects beyond your imagination. I'm going to tell you something, a true story. After the 95 rugby and the Invictus game, FW was talking to Andre Pinar. And he said, how true to life was this? And Andre said, it was pretty okay, the Invictus, but they didn't give enough credit to the coach. And it all starts from the teacher, the coach, who inspires you. And we need unity because we are carrying a difficult past. We need to forget the past and unite in the now. And unfortunately, we can't rely on the politicians because they play their game. So we must unite ourselves. So this started in 2010, this award policy, and is to recognize people of amazing qualities that have the capacity to unite the nation, and you are one of them.
I think I said thank you already. I know Mrs. de Klerk talk about front shop in our. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. We all know. We all know. No. No, we all know what you say. And please, I also take this as a responsibility, not just an honor, to keep on doing what the players are doing, but also what South Africans are doing. And I like the Minister of Sport currently, so I don't understand all the politicians so well, but I do know he tries to support us where we can. I want to say thank you for this, and as I say, the team will see this and we'll make this one of our responsibilities, and I can just say thank you again. Thank you.
Can I just get the team, please just bring the 4 chairs to the front. Can we just collect if there are any particular questions? We can do so quickly. Can I ask the students over there just to bring us 4 chairs? You can just take off the... Yeah. Just want to share with you, these boys are from Bishops. Yeah, and they are putting the chairs on the stage. So thank you very much. Okay. May I ask that our 4 esteemed speakers just step to the front? Please take up seats. Yeah. Okay. Right. Ladies. Okay. So we are not going to spend a lot of time in terms of perhaps the question and answer session. Perhaps if while my colleagues are still busy outside, is there any particular question you would like to ask to any of the esteemed panelists here in front? Let me just get an indication. There is a hand. Yes, you go ahead.
But if we actually look at the actualization thereafter, I think I'll speak louder, auctioneer. Nothing thereafter happened. And I think that diminishes the hope of many South Africans of saying, is it just yet another billion rand spent on another report?
I think if you look at I think if you look at our system of governance, we've got accountability mechanisms in all of that. We've got a representative democracy, participatory democracy. So coming to your question on consequence management and appointment of staff, the municipal staff regulations that have just been promulgated, we're doing research on that now. I think that is a step in the right direction because it regulates how we appoint, performance management, it also regulates skills development, and it has a competency framework. And so the era of appointing your friends into positions, that is over. And it's a step in the right direction. The white paper on local government is being currently reviewed, and the minister, I think, has blown some fresh air into that. And that process is being reviewed. So hopefully we will see improvement. It is slow, but you know, the difference in municipalities is leadership. If you've got ethical leadership at the top, it makes the world of difference.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give the opportunity to my esteemed colleagues just to ask particular questions. And if there's a particular person that needs to answer that, please direct it to that person. Thank you.
Thank you, Christo. Rassie, I have a question from one of the audience members who is an avid rugby lover, and he wants to know if we are going to win the next World Cup.
I think we have as good a chances as in the 2 previous ones.
You say you don't understand politicians, but that was a very politician answer. Or Andreas, was that a very diplomatic answer, would you say? Magda, question from the audience is, how does the future of South Africa look 20 years from now, if we decide to go with the West or if we decide to go with the East? Can you describe both scenarios for us?
I thought you were going to ask, how do you pronounce your surname? But I mean, that's an interesting question. And, you know, no one knows what the future holds, particularly 20 years from now. You know, we are going through, you know, in a more bigger picture view, we're going through, you know, the same transformation as the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. So AI, artificial intelligence, moving from where we are now to something where, you know, you've got, whether it's general intelligence or, you know, generative artificial intelligence, it doesn't matter. You are moving into a brand new world. And whether you do it via the east route or whether you do it via the west route, I don't think it will materially change what the world will look like, simply because there's so much change happening right now. We don't know what lies ahead. It's, you know, it was much easier, I think, in 1960s, 1970s to project what will happen in 20 years' time. Where we are now at this humongous cusp of change, it really is difficult to say what the future looks like. The one thing you can say for certain, though, is that, again, whether it's west or whether it's east, the one thing that is going to affect all of us is climate change. That's the thing that we can't stop. And there, again, does it really matter whether we go east or we go west, simply because neither respects the concept of climate change? So I know it's a no answer, simply because there isn't an easy answer. You know, I can certainly tell you in the next 5 years, you know, if we go and somehow manage to convince Trump that we are not the S country, and that's, I think, how he called Africa last time, then, you know, we've got much better prospects for growth, and hence, you know, job creation, and hence, you know, resolution, at least trying to, to resolve some of the issues we're facing. I do believe, it's a personal belief that, you know, if we go east, then the future looks a lot bleaker. But where we are going to be in 20 years' time, I have no idea. Hopefully winning the rugby, though.
Thank you. Well, I can say that as a young person, well, I'm truly inspired by all of the insights shared by all of our speakers today. I think that I've seen that the challenges we face, whether in governance or in justice or in reconciliation, are indeed complex, but they also provide us with great opportunities to work on for the future. Before I ask the question, if I may, I was reminded by the audience that former President de Klerk once said, above all, we owe it to the children of the world to stop the conflicts and to create new horizons for them. And so therefore the audience asks to all of our speakers, Dr. Cloete, the fact that you're working with young people is music to our ears, and as we speak about South Africa's position in the world, how do the speakers see the youth's role in shaping the pro-South Africa narrative, given their positioning locally? Young people are still forming, are still becoming, meaning that they don't own assets, and they don't have a path to power immediately. Yet they will, in the very near future, constitute over 50% of the world's population. So the question is, what creative, youth-friendly partnerships in commerce, diplomacy, and sport do the speakers feel need to be supported?
Thank you very much. I think it's a heavy question. But let me start, you know, I come from the 80s. And when we grew up in the 80s, with the turbulent 80s, we had at high school awareness programs, for example. So we would listen to songs, Bob Marley, Redemption Song, analyze his poems, and had a very big pull to social justice issues. And when we got to University of the Western Cape, you know, that story continued because you were in the midst of it. And I think we were lucky. I sometimes call it the good old bad days, because you were made aware at a very young age about how your actions can influence society. And that has, I think, stayed with me. What we're trying to do in the Paarl community through the community radio station and the community youth center is to get young people to own that spaces as well. So to create that opportunities. I like to believe that I'm like Crystal, forever young, but we create that spaces for young people to have that type of conversations. Sometimes I think, and I may be wrong, I was observed, we were at a restaurant last night, I was observing 2 young people having dinner. But they were more on their phone. And I actually took a picture of them. They were more on their phones, making selfies, doing things, making videos how they're eating. I'm not quite sure if young people are interested in the future. You know, in terms of how we feel about it, how my generation felt about this need for social change and creating a just, more fairer society. I'm not sure that they are interested in that. It appears to be, and I don't have empirical evidence on that, that just about the me, me, me. We've entered that era of me, 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 me. And how we change that, I'm not sure. And I think it's through dialogue with young people that we need to find from them, because they are the future. Not tomorrow, they're the future today, and their voice must come through stronger. If you look at our community radio station, I think half of our young people, half of them are youth, leading the conversations on the community radio station. So I think we have also on our board took the deliberate decision that said the future is 50 minus, the board can't be 50 plus. And so we now we've got a stronger 50 minuses than the 50 pluses.
Okay, so you probably think, what the hell is he going to say now? What's he going to say now? But if I link it to sport, yes, I remember the old days when I was playing, just before it was professional, and then it was semi-professional, and then there was money in the game, and then it was actually, full on. You could do it as a job. I think there was a lot of selfishness in the game because there was money in the game, and if you look at our team selection protocol, which I'm not shy to share, your actual ability and the way you can play is actually like the 4th thing we look at. And the first one is ownership. And it's all the things that you can control, which doesn't take talent. And we explained it like this to the players. Hopefully I'll be quick. I try to explain it. We said, if you get into a Springbok setup and there's a guy that's 27, let's take a scrum off, Grant Williams, Herschel Yankees, and Faf. And Faf is 26 and Herschel is 22. Who's the senior? Who's the leader? And everybody said Faf, 26. So you ask, okay, cool. 2 years later, Faf's 28, Herschel's 24. Who's the leader? They said Faf. So I say, where's Faf going to catch up? So we changed it from leadership because it's almost like it becomes a little bit of a cliche that the older you get, you're a leader automatically. But if you change that to ownership, but the ownership mustn't be for yourself. The ownership must be for the right thing get done, and what's my part in the right thing, and how we will win the right thing. And that's almost the first thing. If you tick that box, then we go to, okay, what's your skill level, and what can we coach on you? So ownership in our world, which is not a business world, is probably the most important thing. And I heard that's a word you also said. So I also think I'm clever now.
Ambassador Peschke, what is the perception of South Africa in Germany and EU politics? Are we the small S in BRICS? Is that Spain? Okay. How has our relationship changed over the past few years? And how do you see it changing if, as in one of the scenarios that Magda outlined, we go with more Eastern relations?
Quite an excellent reputation in Germany, and I would say also in Europe. Just take the number of German visitors coming to South Africa. So everybody loves to come here and spend as much time as possible in South Africa, particularly in summer, because when it's summer here, it's winter in Germany. So it's a nice reversal of seasons. Apart from that, no. Well, it was, I think, the current American president who said on a question of a Spanish journalist, Spain, isn't it in BRICS? So everybody was joking afterwards that the S actually means Spain instead of South Africa. We know that South Africa is in BRICS. For us, South Africa is a very important partner, and I think there is a kind of a geopolitical competition. Magda spoke about it. So we also try to come in with good offers of partnership to South Africa, but we would not say that South Africa needs to choose between it's either us or it's either them. I think that's the wrong choice to put. I mean, if you do that, that's not the kind of world we want. I think we are currently going through a stage of very antagonistic politics and political posturing, but actually that's the kind of world we want to overcome. We are looking for a united world. We want to work together, because if you talk about climate change, if we have a world split up between the West, the East, Russia, and we are not going to overcome climate change. If we don't work together, then the Western Cape, you said it, you said so, it might become, I don't think it's true, but then it will affect all of us. So we need to work together, and I think countries, particularly countries which are not as big as the United States, as China, they are in a position to be bridge builders. So South Africa, actually, I would say, could be a bridge builder, also between different camps. As European Union, as Germany, we also try to build bridges. So that's the kind of vision we would have for the future.
Picking up from Ambassador Peschke's answer on us having to work together, Magda, a question for you is, the recently sworn-in President of the United States, Donald Trump, has become infamous for employing his America First policy. Do you think South Africa should apply a South Africa First policy? And also, what message do you have for businesses in South Africa to actually invest in endeavors in South Africa that will be to the benefit of all South Africans?
So, look, I mean, I think fundamentally every country at its core should unify around South Africa first or Germany first. But, you know, that must be in the context of being part of a much bigger picture. And in order to be successful in being, you know, America first, you actually have to forge partnerships and leverage off the strengths of those partnerships and, you know, recognize that you are not the center of the universe. And you cannot become protectionist. And countries have tried. I mean, you know, China for many years, Japan pre-World War II. And none of these kind of protectionist policies where you do not interact with other countries, where when you do, it's by virtue of threatening them, actually benefits the country itself. So should Trump, you know, actually implement everything that he's talking about, what will happen in the United States? Inflation will go through the roof. Societal discontent will go through the roof. You know, people who are brighter, well, not brighter, but people with global ambitions will leave because they want to live on a global stage, not a protectionist state. So, you know, as much as he says what he says, I think at the end of the day, you go back to this, you know, as far as Trump is concerned, he's really on a reality show. That's how he thinks of himself. He is the guy who says, "You're fired," and the audience applauds. And, but, you know, the other thing he believes is he believes in this art of the deal. So everything is transactional. Every threat he puts on the table, he expects someone to respond with a counter-proposal. He doesn't expect the threat that he puts on the table to be immediately taken for what it is. He's expecting a bargaining around it. So, you know, in terms of South Africa first, I think everyone in this room will say we want to put South Africa first as far as growth, success, prosperity is concerned, but also recognizing that we can only do that by interacting with the rest of the world.
What would you have said is a good counter threat negotiation to have made to him withdrawing the TB and HIV ARV funding with PEPFAR. Because apparently what we said, I heard it now during the coffee break, was keep your America, we'll keep our South Africa. So what would have been a more, what would you have proposed to enter into negotiations there? How would you have handled that situation?
Look, what do we have commercially that he needs? Minerals. We've got manganese, we've got platinum. You know, if we control 90% of the world's platinum, we control something of substance. So, you know, you can't go into these negotiations trying to, you know, with a, you know, hope and a prayer and being nice. You've got to go in there with some commercially meaningful propositions. You know, yet another thing that you could put on the table is the fact that South Africa requires infrastructure investment. Now, you know, no business invests in anything, and to your point previously, you know, South African businesses don't invest if they can't see money on the table at the end of the road. So what would you go to Trump with? Well, the proposition of get American companies in here, in public-private partnerships, to invest in infrastructure with the expectation of financial you know, benefits arising out of that. So South Africa requires a lot of infrastructure investment. Let American companies come in here, cut through the red tape, strip away the regulation, make it attractive to invest by virtue of that. Don't make it difficult. That is the playground we'll give you. We need, you know, electrical infrastructure to be built. Come in, let American companies invest. We'll make it very easy. That's another thing that you can put on the table. But, you know, whatever we go to Trump with, it has to be tangible. It has to be monetized, or being able to be monetized. That is what, you know, he's all about. Where's the buck? Where do I make the next buck? That's what you've got to go to him with. And as I said, counter threat. We've got minerals. They don't.
To Coach Rassie, South Africa is currently under a lot of pressure. Social pressure, economic pressure, political pressure. And we now have a government of national unity with, as Magda pointed to, politicians who work together because they must. But the Springboks have mastered the art of winning under pressure. How does South Africa create Springbok spanne in every community with a winning mentality, not because they have to, but because they want to?
Pause. No. I think, oh, this is how we do it. We don't pick somebody if he's necessarily the best guy. We pick people with the right people. So a guy might be the best in his position, but be so selfish and drive his own agenda. And as I say again, then he won't even make it past the first step in our team selection protocol. So that's why I think, being honest, first of all, the management, like the coaches and the selectors and the SNC coaches and the medical team, and being honest and saying, is this guy honest with his injury? Is he fit enough? You know, and is he putting himself ahead of the team? Because if you want to play individual sport, go and play tennis or golf or something like that. If you want to play a team sport, you have to work together and put your body on the line. The first thing is get the right people on the bus, get the right people to the training field, and then everything else is a little bit easier.
Last two questions. Dank je, Ismail. Magda, you mentioned that South Africa is not having a conversation surrounding AI. Looking at Dr. Cloete's talk about local government, because I mean, in the end, AI and the youth, it's going to play out in local communities. What can we do? What can local government do? What should it look like? Any ideas?
Look, I mean, the usage, I mean, they're two different things, you know. Sorry, not two different things. There is AI, and what exists today. And really right now what we have is we've got huge, algorithmic processes where, it really one word spewts out another word, spewts out another word. So, the AI as we know it at the moment is really a conversational tool. What you can feed into it is a question, it will give you an answer. Not necessarily the best answer, it's just, it's really, there is no intelligence behind it. It's just probabilistic word following. So one, the cat is the most probable word after that is black. So, ChatGPT will say the cat is black. So artificial intelligence, as it stands at the moment, actually has very limited application. And, companies around the world, despite the fact that it's very, populist and it's great for marketing if you say you're using AI, actually no one is truly using AI as it stands because of its limitations. That is today. At the same time, every single company, and we're talking at, I'm not talking about governments because that always comes next. In order to actually be at the frontier of something, you need money. Corporates have money, governments less so. So every company right now is sitting down, and executives of every single company in the world are sitting down and saying, okay, we're seeing what can be done. We can also project what will be available and can be done in future. How do we adjust for that? So, I can only tell you what we are doing, and what we are doing is, and I think, probably that's the best way to start, is to look at, we're sitting down now, I think next month, with brightest minds at Sygnia, and, we really going cross sections through the company and saying, what does Sygnia look like in 5 years' time? What does a financial services company, given AI, what do we look like? And then we're going to take that back in and start with small AI projects and implementation of AI. Because it's one thing to look at what can chats or large language models do versus how can we actually use them. And that bridge hasn't been crossed, by the way, the bit where we know what these things can do. We know what we can expect of a ChatGPT. No company has quite figured out how to actually apply it internally successfully. So, in terms of governments, once you've got some examples in the corporate world of how AI is being used, that can then be extrapolated into the government sphere. Until such time, AI is just a buzzword.
Yeah. I think the city of Joburg, like I said, they've started experimenting with it. In terms of the COVID, they started with the public participation processes to generate reports, etc. So there's a start. Not enough has been written about it, although government have published in August 2024 the AI framework, the South African government. So I think that is a start. The big danger is leaving people behind. The digital literacy and the digital divide, given our high levels of poverty in this country. And so I think it's an underutilized source that could greatly aid government in terms of its evidence-based decision-making as well. To take the partisan nature out of that decision-making by giving the machine, to analyze reports, for example. And the pushback from officials to use this, because people fear technology. I had an 80-year-old aunt who did all the cell phone banking. They're simple little things. But you have younger people, of my other colleagues, who are still afraid to use these tools that are available. And so I think AI presents a wonderful platform for better governance into the future. And we hope to have that discussion on the 11th of March in Paarl with the City of Johannesburg, and we've invited all other local governments in that area to come and learn from, and then hopefully do an audit and say what are the areas where we can. Because taking from my German colleagues in terms of digital public management, that is what they bring a high degree of change management also in that. Because people fear change naturally, and so how do you take people by the hand and use the available tools to better have a better government.
To Ambassador Peschke, with the changing geographic plates now in the world, or geopolitical plates rather, let me say, you mentioned that South Africa might be a frontrunner for a permanent United Nations Security Council seat. Question then is, do you think that South Africa's case against Israel before the ICJ helped or hindered that effort?
I think that I would need AI to answer that question. I think that's just independent, different questions, I would say. As I've said, we don't agree with the legal position of South Africa on that matter, but we appreciate the fact that South Africa actually used international institutions and international law to clarify it. I mean, that's the important thing. Other countries don't use international rules, don't use international law to clarify their things. They just take the law into their own hands and do what might is right. So I think as a proponent of international law, of international rules, of a reformed United Nations, certainly South Africa would be a strong candidate for that seat. But again, this is up to the African continent to decide. Actually, there's, I would say, you know, in Germany there are many people who are saying, we are the third largest contributor to the United Nations. Actually, Germany should also have a seat in that council because we are paying so much. So we have a candidature, but I think ours is much weaker, because as we look at the world now, when the United Nations was set up in 1945, almost all of Africa was under the yoke of colonialism. How can you have a just and equal United Nations when it just reflects a reality where this continent wasn't even free to decide itself where it want to belong? So I think countries like South Africa need to step forward and need to be put in that, into that position of responsibility.
Advocate Hoffman.
Thank you so much. I've got a question and an observation for each member of the panel. I'll work from left to right, so Rassie is for pudding. He says that's a good idea, yeah. The person who thought that Spain was a BRICS country was inaugurated, and on his inauguration day, Donald Trump said, "Don't you know, S in BRICS is for Spain?" No. Yes. True, I heard it myself. It was on television. Magda, you gave me the impression in the beginning of your talk that you are resigned to or overwhelmed by the prevalence of corruption in South Africa. There's nothing to be done about it. You just regard it as part of the noise in the room. If I got the right impression, she says, no. Well, maybe it's just the way you said it. But what do we all do when there's nothing left to loot? That's really the question around corruption. Yours is easy. All those wonderful principles and values in the Constitution, Section 195, that are meant to inform the public administration, have simply been ignored. Do you know why? Sê vir my, Rassie, why is it that Peter, you've got a Western Cape audience here, why is it that Peter Steph du Toit is not in the top 10 money earners of professional rugby? Has it got something to do with his injuries, or is he just a bad businessman?
Now, if I gave you the idea that I'm resigned to anything, that's a very wrong impression of me. You know, I've always said in terms of corruption, you know, corruption exists absolutely everywhere. It actually exists all around the world. Name a country that isn't corrupt. Maybe New Zealand, because I've always said they're just too boring. In all the
Germany, but
no, Germany we go. You guys had SEP. You were players on our stage. So corruption permeates everywhere. It's in business. It's it's in the public sector. But I've always talked about functional corruption, dysfunctional corruption. So functional corruption is where money still changes hands, but the politicians make sure that the country works. And then you've got dysfunctional corruption, which is like in South Africa, where or Nigeria of this world, where money changes hands and the politicians couldn't care less whether there are potholes in the roads. Having said that, at the end of the day, what can be done about corruption? Daylight. Speak about it, expose it. Does it matter if the person necessarily goes to jail? If you can destroy their reputation, for that matter, or destroy, their good name and social standing by virtue of exposing corruption. What's a bigger jail sentence? The Guptas, flipping hell, they looted a lot of money, and they have never been held to account in terms of, sitting in a South African jail, but they've been held to account in terms of public opinion. They landed up in UAE, and yes, maybe they've bribed their way out of the jail cell, but guess what? What was open to them with all their money? They went to India. India didn't want to know, didn't want them either. So they are hiding out somewhere in one of the Russian states, Kazakhstans of this world. So exposure of corruption is a much better, want. People putting people in jail, it's neither here nor there. Exposure. Buddy. Exposure. To me, having your name in the headline, saying crook XYZ is much bigger punishment than putting someone in a jail cell.
I was thinking how to respond, I think in our dealing with municipalities and with public, so there's two types of people in the municipality. Those that are genuinely interested to serve the people, public servants, genuinely use the platform to serve their communities better. Then there's the other spectrum of people who they're there, but they're not there. There's a song that says your body's here, but your mind is on the other side of town. So what Thabo Mbeki once said, people come to work as late as possible, expect to be paid as much as possible, do as little as possible, and leave as early as possible. And so people are there, but they're disengaged. And that has got a lot to do with management, is what we find in our research. The management, people disengage. They lose confidence, they don't trust the manager, and there's politics on the administrative level as well. And so if those lines are blurred, it becomes a mess. People are at work, but they're not there. They do the bare minimum. And so to turn that around, I was thinking the other day aloud, is ethics taught or is it caught? Can you really teach a person to be ethical? If the university puts out a course in ethics, can you teach a person? I think ethics is caught, and it's caught at home, and that value system that you bring into that. So in South Africa, we've got all the right things. Batuphile, it's beautiful, courtesy, openness, transparency. But it's in the behavior where there's a problem. And that's not black or white, it's the behavior. And that has to change. The work ethic has to change. Why we are there needs to change. That's why in our governance 5IQ, the first thing we ask in our workshops is, why do we do what we do? It's a Simon Sinek asked the question, but start with why. But Miles Monroe also asked, it starts with purpose. And so for me, working for government should be the highest honor. I'm a public servant. I'm serving. I'm not an official, I'm serving. And that has gone out of our dialogue, I think, this of serving South Africa. And the real danger is that people copped out. Young people say, why must I vote? If I look at you, you're all the same, man. You're all the same. You're only there for your self-interest. And so we need to have a deep-seated conversation about public and servant leadership. I'm here to serve, not myself. I'm using the seat to serve and to make my society better. I think if we can get that back into our dictionary, I think that would help.
Fantastic. Oh, sorry. Yes, Rassie, if you want to say. Okay.
There's his question to ask. Master? The question is actually very simple. So if you play in France, that's the highest paying league. And then the second highest paying league is the Premiership. And then the third highest league paid is Japan. But the Japanese league falls into a nice bracket, had to actually get a very good rest time to be ready for the Springboks. Whereas the French league, which is the highest paid league, almost overlap with when we start test matches. So you only get a guy a Sunday before a Saturday match. So Peter, and I don't know where they got the numbers. He's definitely a well-paid player, but because they still want to play for the Springboks, they don't all go to France and just take the money. And we saw that those are guys we want in the team.
Yeah, sorry. Christo is telling me, no, we're going to run over time. You need to end the question session now. We will come and find you because I am burning with questions that I did not get the chance to ask.
Including where the youth should invest their money.
Okay. So this is our dedicated staff members. As you can see, the foundation also serves as a hub for interns. We've appointed another 3 or 4 interns for this year. We had them last year, and it's just amazing to see how these young people progress in other environments. Once they leave us, they're ready for the adult world, and it's just amazing. I just saw this morning on LinkedIn one of the interns that have been with us. He now has been appointed at another institution. And that's wonderful to see, because that's what we do. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost at the end. There's a guy, Frikkie Erasmus. Where's Frikkie? Frikkie, sta op man. Nee. Dames en heren, ons moet Frikkie 'n hande klap gee. Ja. En die eenvoudige rede is, as dit nie vir Frikkie was Rassie nie hier vandag nie. So Frikkie, baie dankie. Ek het groot waardering. Ons het nie eens mekaar geken nie en jy kry skielik hierdie bloute uit iemand wat vir jou vra, praat met Rassie. En baie dankie, hierdie knop vir ons deurgehaak, né? Baie dankie. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask our Deputy Chairperson, Christina Teichmann, to just do a word of thanks. Christina?
Dear guests, dear friends of the FW de Klerk Foundation. Oh, sorry, I thought my voice is loud enough. Sorry. Dear guests, dear friends of the FW de Klerk Foundation, we have come to the end of our conference today. And I hope you took a lot of new insights with you. And I have the privilege to say a few words of thanks to all the people who have made this conference a success. I firstly would like to thank our speakers who have made themselves available and who have shared their insights and expertise with us. Thanks to the German Ambassador, Mr. Andreas Peschke. We deeply value the relationship we enjoy with Germany. To Magda Wierzycka. I was threading that moment. So I'm just saying Magda from now on. Thank you, Magda, for making the time and for your courage in fighting for good governance and against corruption in this country. Chapeau, we really appreciate your efforts very much. Thanks to Dr. Harlan Cloete for coming all the way from the Free State to address us and for putting PAL on the map. And also for teaching us what GTSD means and stands for. I didn't know before. Thank you. I can use it in my private life as well. To my husband, somebody said. I didn't say that. A special word of thanks and appreciation goes to Rassie Erasmus, our recipient of the 2024 FW de Klerk Goodwill Award, for making the miracle of winning 2 Rugby World Cups in a row happening, and most of all for bringing South African people closer together and making them feeling proud to be South African. Thank you very much to you and your team. And we trust and we hope that you and your team will continue making miracles happen, and that you will bring home the World Cup in 2027 as well. No pressure. Thanks also to Frikkie Erasmus and Dion Davids for your kind assistance for bringing Rassie here. Thank you. We also would like to express our gratitude to our friends Wayne Bronkhorst and Eddie Meyer from Wilde Paardenjacht for sponsoring the wine that will be enjoyed in due course. I don't know where you are. Wayne and Eddie, I'm not sure if they're here. They're not here, but the wine is here. That's the most important thing, okay. Then a special thank you goes to Gregor Jecke and the Konrad Adenauer Foundation for your ongoing support. The partnership with the Konrad Adenauer Foundation has stood the test of time, and we as the FW de Klerk Foundation value it very, very much. Thank you. And last but not least, I would like to thank our staff members, and I would like them to stand up if they're here in the room. Brenda, where are you, Brenda? Maybe outside. Here she is. Brenda, Jill, she's outside. Abigail, Daniela and Ishmael for organizing today's event and for making it a success. It is a great pleasure and privilege also for me to work with such a competent and dedicated staff. Thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, I would like to thank you, the audience, for coming, and I would like to invite you now to continue the discussion and the conversation over some snacks and the wine from Wilde Paardenjacht. Thank you so much. Thanks.